Welcome to our explainer. Today, we're putting on our detective hats. We're going to crack the code on those mysterious, stubborn rashes and really dig into the definitive test dermatologists use to solve the case. So let's get right into it.
You know the feeling, right? That itch you just can't shake, a rash that seems to have a life of its own, coming back no matter what you throw at it. It is so frustrating. But what if there's a clear culprit that you just haven't been able to name yet?
All right, so to really get to the bottom of this, we have to understand that not all rashes that pop up from touching something are created equal. There are really two main players in this story, and knowing the difference between them, well, that's the first huge step.
Okay, so on one side you've got irritant contact dermatitis, or ICD. This one's the most common, and it's pretty straightforward. It's just direct damage to your skin from something harsh, like a chemical or a detergent. But then, on the other side, you have allergic contact dermatitis, or ACD. And this isn't just surface damage. Oh no! This is your immune system launching a full-on, targeted attack.
Now, what makes ACD so tricky, so hard to figure out, is that it's a delayed reaction. Your immune system's special T cells spot a substance, decide it's a threat, and then they mount an attack. And that delay is everything. It's why a rash might not show up for hours or even a couple of days after you've touched the trigger. It makes playing detective on your own almost impossible.
So how do doctors find the real culprit behind all this? This is where the real detective work kicks in, using the absolute gold standard tool for the job, patch testing. It's specifically designed to unmask the exact allergens your body is secretly fighting. When we look at the data for the usual suspects, a few common culprits show up over and over again. According to the North American Contact Dermatitis Group, we're often talking about metals like nickel and cobalt. Think jewelry or belt buckles. Then you've got fragrances and lotions, preservatives like MCI/MI in shampoos, and even PPD, a common component in hair dyes.
And what's really fascinating is that this lineup of culprits is always changing. For instance, a big one popping up recently is acrylates, which are found in the adhesives of medical devices like continuous glucose monitors. It's a perfect example of how our modern world is actually creating brand new allergy challenges.
So, if you think you might have an allergy, what does this test actually involve? What's it feel like? Let's walk through the whole journey, right from the patient's point of view.
It's basically a four-step mission. First, dozens of tiny chambers, each with a different potential allergen, are taped onto your back. Step 2. You go home and you have one job. Keep your back totally dry for 48 hours. No sweating, no showers back there. Then, after 2 days, you come back to get the patches taken off for a first look. But the real moment of truth, the most important part, is that final reading a couple of days later. That's when those sneaky, delayed reactions finally show themselves.
Now, to make sure all that effort isn't for nothing, you have to prep correctly. This is so important. It means no topical steroids on your back for at least a week before the test, and you'll want to avoid sun exposure on your back for a week or two. Both of those can hide a reaction. And you absolutely have to tell your doctor about every single medication you're on, especially anything that messes with your immune system, because it could make a real allergy completely invisible to the test. Okay, the test is done. Now what? Well, the next phase of the investigation begins, decoding the results. And it's not as simple as just seeing a red spot. It's about an expert knowing exactly how to read the clues your skin is leaving behind.
Dermatologists use a special scoring system to grade every single spot. It can be anything from a plus, which is like, maybe something's there, but we're not sure, all the way up to a triple plus. That's a strong, obvious blistering reaction. This detailed grading system is what helps them separate a minor irritation from a major allergic trigger. This is probably one of the most frustrating things that can happen. You go through the whole week-long process, you get your results, and nothing. The test is negative, but your rash is still there. So what on earth does that mean? Well, a negative result doesn't automatically mean case closed. You can get what's called a false negative for a bunch of reasons. You might be on a medication that's suppressing your immune system, or maybe you got a little too much sun before the test. It could even be that the final reading was just a bit too early to catch a super delayed reaction. So, on the flip side, what about the opposite problem?
What if you get a positive result, you start avoiding that thing like the plague, and your rash still doesn't get better? This is where we get into the tricky business of the false positive.
You see, a red spot on your back isn't always a true allergy. It could just be a simple irritant reaction to that specific substance, or maybe you're just allergic to the tape they used. There's even this thing called angry back syndrome, where one really strong reaction makes all the skin around it super sensitive, causing other unrelated patches to light up. This is exactly why it takes a real expert to connect the dots.
So after all this investigating, all this testing and decoding, what's the end game? Well, the point isn't just to get a label for your rash. It's about finding a clear, sustainable path to actually feeling better.
The ultimate prize here is knowledge. It's empowerment. You walk away with a personalized avoidance list. Think of it like your own personal map for navigating the world, showing you exactly which ingredients and substances to steer clear of in your products, at your job, everywhere.
But let's talk about those really specific, kind of weird cases. For instance, what if you put on sunscreen and you're totally fine indoors, but the second you step outside and the sun hits your skin, bam, a rash appears? What's that all about?
That situation points to a very specific condition called photoallergic contact dermatitis. It happens when a substance, often in things like sunscreens or even some topical pain creams, only turns into an allergen when it gets zapped by UV light. And guess what? There's a special test just for that. It's called photo patch testing. And here's how it works. They put two identical sets of allergens on your back. After a couple of days, one of those sets gets exposed to a very specific, controlled dose of UVA light, usually 5 joules per square centimeter. To give you an idea, that's kind of like being in the midday summer sun for about 15 or 20 minutes. If you only get a reaction on the side that saw the light, case closed. So you get your avoidance list. But what happens then? I mean, avoidance is step one for sure, but it's not the only tool in the toolbox. For managing flare-ups or really chronic stuff, there is a whole range of treatments, from topical steroids and light therapy, all the way to exciting new targeted medicines for really severe cases, like chronic hand eczema. And that's the hopeful part. The science here is always pushing forward. For example, the recent approval of dolgocetinib cream offers a brand new, highly targeted topical option for adults with severe chronic hand eczema, which has historically been an incredibly tough condition to manage. It's a real step forward.
But at the end of the day, after all the science and all the incredible tests, it's so important to remember this. The single most important clue isn't on any test panel. It's your story. The tests give the doctor the raw data, but you provide the context, the real-world clues. The true answer is always found right where the science and your personal story meet.